Hello, this is checkpoint 1.8 from section 1.1. We have a function here and they want us to find the domain and the range of this function. Okay, so the domain, for us to find the domain, we want to look for square roots or fractions or anything like that. And when we get to the trig and the exponential logarithmic functions, there are going to be more restrictions there. Here we have an absolute value function. That's the only like anomaly type of function that's being composed here. And so we don't see any issues with putting in values because regardless of what value we put in for x, it'll still be okay. So there seems to be no restrictions. We'll just say no restrictions. And then we can say that our domain is going to be all real numbers. We'll write that in a couple of different ways. We can say all real numbers. We can say more formally x, such that it belongs to real numbers and no restrictions after that. Or we can write it in interval notation going from minus infinity to positive infinity. So these are several ways of writing our domain. Now let's figure out our range. And so for our range, what we want to do is we want to see what's happening with this. So the absolute value gives some restriction now for the range. It gives no restriction for the domain, but for the range, we want to make sure that the absolute value, the output is always going to be a positive number. So we can start by saying, okay, if we have the absolute value of anything, that this is going to be positive. Actually, it could also be equal to 0 as well. For example, if x is equal to minus 2, then that's 0. When x is equal to 3, then this is 5 positive. When x is equal to negative 3, this is going to be negative 1. But the absolute value would make it positive, so everything will be positive. Okay, so now we want to subtract 4 from both sides. Let's imagine subtracting 4 from both sides. And then we will get our original function on the left-hand side. So that's x plus 2 in the absolute value minus 4. And this is bigger than or equal to negative 4, because that's what we had subtracted out. But we know that this thing is actually equal to now f of x. And so f of x, the y values are always going to be, got two negatives here, so the y values are always going to be bigger than negative 4. So that looks like it's going to be your domain, or your range. So your range would be y values, let's call it r. It's going to be the y values that are real numbers such that, so there's a restriction here. Let's write this a little bit clearer so we can see it. So we said range is equal to the y values such that they're real numbers, or y values are real numbers such that y is bigger than or equal to negative 4. Okay. All right, so that should be your range. Now we have a domain and then our range. You should take a look at the graph of this to see if this actually does make sense. And when you take a look at the graph of this, you should see a V, a picture of a V that's been shifted somehow. All right, I hope that helps.